course, iHeartRadio and all of the other online platforms you can get us on. But yeah, you can sit on your couch and watch us on TV. You can drive down the road, listen to this on the radio, or go on one of your mobile devices. Big Biz Show is on there. There we go. Good to see you. Hey, I wanted to get Jim Mish back on the air real quick again because they had a great earnings call, or actually an earnings podcast here this week, and it was actually very impressive. And you know, as we all know, Jim's one of my favorite guys. He's the CEO of 22nd Century Group, stock symbol XXII. They are a leading agriculture biotech company focusing on tobacco harm reduction, is actually what it's called. And they are also obviously in the hemp space and the cannabis space. They are dramatically reducing tobacco-related disease and death in the U.S. with their new VLN combustible cigarette. That, if you compare the nicotine, it's not even. I wish they were still running magazine ads like they were back in the day when you used to see the bar and such. Maybe we can show that real quick. But once again, I give you a very busy man who's taking a little bit of time out of his day to talk with us, Jim Mish. Jim, great to see you, brother.
Hey, great to see you guys as well. Thanks for having me back again.
Hey, listen, let's talk about, I mean, I got so many great emails and just about your earnings this last time that we talked about earnings. I know we've talked about it a number of times, but you got to give us an overview on everything that's going on. Not necessarily about the earnings side, but everything going on with XXII over the last 3 months is pretty impressive. Can you kind of give us an overview for some of those guys that wanted to hear it all over again?
Yeah, sure. It's, and there's two aspects of the business. Certainly VLN and the tobacco business unit is key to us, but also our cannabis hemp business has been very active as well. But, on the VLN side, we have now expanded that launch, as I've said before, into 8 out of a targeted 18 states we plan to be in this year. The portion of the team is really laser focused on execution in California, Florida, and Texas that we announced launching plans a short while ago, and we're finishing up that process. Those are the biggest smoking states in the U.S., and we're in process of expanding that and being on shelf here in Q2.
Wow.
And driving those businesses. The other 5 states are coming along, so that team is laser focused on really execution in those 3 states because they are really pivotal. And then the remaining part of the team continues to focus on the remaining states of the 18 we're targeting to plant the flag and begin the commercialization there. So it's really a 2-pronged effort now. And every day we get, we build up more momentum on the VLN side. And again, we're dedicated to this mission. The more hands we get this combustible product in, the FDA clinical studies are very compelling. Feedback from people who are accessing it and using it are very compelling and in line with those clinical studies. So it's a great mission, and it gets immediate response once people get access to the product. So.
Well, at the same time, you guys are making. I mean, you're bringing the ball down the field with. I mean, every time I read a press release, it's something impressive. And I know there's more to come. I want you to take a couple of minutes and talk about VLN being the first and only combustible cigarette that has received this MRTP, which means Modified Risk Tobacco Product designation from the FDA. We haven't talked about the product for a while. Let's talk about it for those people who aren't really familiar with it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was a visionary product thought process that goes back into the early 2000s from the founder of the company, really visionary individual who wanted to do something to reduce harm caused by regular combustible cigarettes. We wrapped at that time gene editing technology around the tobacco to get it down to the nicotine levels that you've seen on those charts, 95% less nicotine. Wrapped significant IP around that, not only a single varietal, but all the varietals used in cigarette blends. And then went into a process, much like a pharmaceutical, to get not 1, but 2 FDA authorizations. One is called a PMTA in order to get the product on the shelf whatsoever. And then finally, a modified risk tobacco product authorization from the FDA based on their clinical trials that demonstrated a dramatic reduction of cigarettes smoked per day when people switch over to VLN. That took several years, much like a pharmaceutical.
Sure.
We got that authorization about 1.5 years ago and have been piloting it and then expanding it ever since.
James, how's the partnership with the United States military? I know you've talked in terms of, getting those onto bases and things like that for the men and women who serve.
Yeah, as we've talked before, the Pentagon is driving harm reduction from smoking throughout the entire military. We've gotten the product into now 6 Marine bases around the country. More to come on that, and it's going very well. There's hundreds of these bases in the U.S. across all the services, and there really is a partnership there at the highest levels to drive this. So. And it also spills into the VA hospitals as well. We're talking with those folks and expanding into that area as well with the support of the U.S. government.
You know, what's interesting is you mentioned this on one of your first times on the air with me, Jim. And of course, Jim Mish is our guest. He's the CEO of 22nd Century Group. They are publicly traded under the stock symbol XXII. The benefits of VLN cigarettes are supported by over $100 million of independent clinical studies, largely funded by the FDA. Talk about that. That's one of the first things you told me. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, the original clinical studies, along with consumer studies, showed that the vast majority of smokers want to quit, have tried quitting but failed. They don't have the right tools. That was using patches and gums and et cetera, or vapes. So the consumer studies themselves directed these clinical studies. The clinical studies went on for years, thousands of patients. Thousands of smokers, and dramatic reduction in stick smoke, some as high as 70 to 80% after a few months of utilizing VLN. There is a quadrant of people, about somewhere between 10 and 15% of those smokers stop altogether. So the clinical trials, again, it was funded entirely by the FDA because they were behind this, and it's part of their universal program in order to reduce harm. But that clinical studies are extremely impressive, and the product works, and it works quickly.
Hey, James, before I let you get out of here today, what's next for you? What do you focus on? Do we focus on the hemp cannabis side? Do we focus on the VLN? Do we do everything all at once? Is there a favorite child coming out here, or is it just distribution?
Yeah, we do both. Both business units are extremely important to us. Both are moving very rapidly in the right direction. So the name of the game in VLN is expansion and move it from flag planting in stores to commercial results. And we expect that to ramp up here in the Q2, as we said, across these 18 states, which represents about half of the U.S. smoking market, about $40 billion in revenue. That's the marching orders for VLN. And on the mission of harm reduction, on the hemp cannabis side, we're the leading ingredient manufacturer and supplier of things like CBD going into these consumer products in the medical area. And now we announced just this week a second distributor partnership where we're utilizing our VLN distribution channels to drive these consumer products. And the first one we announced about 3 weeks ago, the second one just this week.
Yep.
The cumulative revenue stream over the term of the contract, which is 3 years in each case, is in excess of $140 million.
Wow.
And there are more of these to come.
Yeah. Jim,
that's the focus there.
Jim, you got to get back to San Diego. We got to spend a whole hour with you here, man. We never get enough time with you. Thank you, Jim. Jim Mish, XXII, 22nd Century. 22nd Century. All right. That does it for us.